Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports, joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's segment, we're doing a news and notes episode for everybody because there's been a lot of news floating around, primarily rosters, but we're going to expand the roster conversation outside of the U.S. women's national team on this episode, and we're excited about it. Before we get into everything, a quick reminder to subscribe to us on YouTube for NWSL extended highlights, exclusive interviews, our live recaps, and so much more. YouTube.com/attacking third. Hit subscribe. It helps us out big time here at A3. Lisa, how you doing, buddy?
Sandra, I'm good. We haven't done a news and notes in a while because there's been Wednesday games, but now we get a midweek break from NWSL action, which is pretty nice because it gives us a chance to catch up on all the roster moves that have happened. Yep. There are international rosters coming out for Euros, for Concacaf, and we get to take a deep dive into them because that means players will be missing for a chunk of the NWSL season through July, ahead of the international window. So clubs need to adjust kind of what they're doing, how they're playing, everything like that. But I am good. It's a little bit thunderstormy in Philadelphia today, but that's all right. I kind of like that weather. I've got a nice candle going and we're recording here. It's good. How are you? I love the kit.
Listen,
you look great in your kit.
Appreciate it. Thanks, homie. I always like the compliment. Appreciate it. I love that you brought up the weather because like the other day we had like tornado warnings in in Chicago. So I was like, this is an interesting development because it happened very, very quickly. It went from like there's going to be thunderstorms in the area to like actually here's some alarms. They're going off constantly. Like go out and seek some shelter. And it came on very, very. That stuff usually happens and develops very, very quickly because I just remember getting these alerts on the phone and stuff like that, and like just seeing people just going about their business until they didn't have to go about their business any longer, and I was like, oh my goodness. So
you didn't see a twister, did you?
No, I did not. It ended up being a lot of rain, thunder, a lot of wind though. It was very, very windy. There was I follow a couple Chicago photographers and some socials, and I did see that there was like maybe some partial debris from like a wall that got missing, and I was like, wow. I was like, that's a little bit that's a little scary, quite frankly. And I was like, so it's
incredibly scary. Tornadoes are so destructive.
My cousin like group chat, we were like checking in with each other, like, is everyone okay? Like, so everyone was doing okay. But yeah, when you're saying like thunderstorms, I'm like, yeah, it's those early summer storms are definitely in the area for right now. But yeah, maybe that's a good way to to start off the episode with the gloom. Unfortunately, we wanted to talk about maybe injury news, before going into some of these other things. But we saw some injuries, take place over the course of the previous NWSL weekend slate of games. We saw a player like Kayla Sharples exit out after the pitch. And at the time of our recording, unfortunately, we don't have an extra update on that right now. But she exited the match against Orlando with what looked like a knee injury. And ultimately, Christen in the Angel City match against Racing Louisville had also exited the match with what looked like a lower leg injury. And she had announced on Monday and confirmed that it actually was, a tore ACL. And I cannot emphasize how much of a drag that was to just sort of like have that confirmation. Her just sort of tweeting out to everyone, my heart's broken. I've torn my ACL. Readily accepting all love, prayers, virtual hugs, dog pictures, and smudging ceremonies. Love you all, XX. And it's just you hate it. I hated it. I was like, seeing it happen in real time. You just don't. And then obviously, we talked a little bit about it in the recaps of those games. With some of these players going down, if it's somebody like a Press or somebody like a Sharples, like obviously two very different positional roles, but you look at these players and what they were doing for their respective club teams, and you got to imagine a big loss for Angel City, with Christen Press out now for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's truly devastating to see that report. It didn't look great when she went down in the game with Angel City on Saturday, and the fact that it took a while for the training staff to get her off the pitch, and then she was helped off, not on her own power. So it didn't look good right from the start. But then to see her put word out there on social media that she did in fact tear her ACL, gutting. Like
Yeah.
I was just gutted when I read that. It's so devastating, so heartbroken. A player that has worked her way back to the top of her game and come back into the NWSL, playing with her hometown in Los Angeles with Angel City, being the face of that team, really driving them to be one of the best clubs in the NWSL that they're trying to be. And she was a huge part of that and doing incredibly well throughout the NWSL as a club, as a player. And then to have this happen is just devastating. And
And
it
also
comes
just like
after a number of other injuries. I feel
I
like
was
we were
gonna
just
say,
on
like,
here
seeing it
talking
happen, I
about,
just felt like, again? Like,
yeah,
that's also what I felt like
we
when
were
it
just here talking
confirmed it.
about Katarina Macario,
I
the
know.
US international playing for Lyon, winning Champions League and then tearing her ACL. And two players in what felt like back-to-back succession, at incredible peaks of their career, having to suffer an incredible, horrible injury.
Yeah.
So
It's also just
prayers. Yeah.
it's also just, like, the timing of it for some of these players, like, they know that these are players that have had double duty, it's club and country, and they are players who are very aware of the calendar in front of them. Like, 2022 is a year to really to bulk up, right? To sort of stack up and get everything correct, for what's ahead in 2023. There's qualifiers that are going to be coming up very, very soon. And that was absolutely my reaction to it. That I was just like, once she kind of confirmed that that's what it was, I was like, God, I was like another one. Like that was absolutely like one of my immediate reactions. Just with Lynn Williams, her hamstring issue, but Press, Williams, Davidson, Macario, these are players who have sustained these kind of major kind of knee or leg injuries, but that's not not even thinking expanding that a little bit and knowing that Mewis is someone who is been dealing with some lower leg injuries, Dahlkemper with the rib injuries, and it's just a tough time right now, I think, for that, for when you're looking at the actual national team and then also the club teams that these players represent. They're just like big pieces of those lineups that are missing. So hopefully it is a speedy recovery for
Yes.
Press, and we
An
get to see her
easy
back on the pitch.
an easy road to recovery,
Yeah,
right?
oh,
Like
yeah.
those are things that we
No
wish, we hope,
complications. Yeah,
and we pray, and we're starting the
yeah.
smudging ceremonies, Press.
Like she like she said, like just follow the advice that
Send dog
she gave.
pics and smudging
Yeah.
ceremonies.
We also have we talked a little bit about how the trade window has opened up during this time across soccer, and for NWSL there was the trade between Racing and Kansas City that we chatted about that sent CC Kaiser and Edison Merrick to the Currents in exchange for some allocation money. But there's also other things happening within the league, and recently Aaron Simon was waived by Racing Louisville as well. And within the release, it was in reference to to pursue other playing opportunities. So we will see if we were saying, Lisa, when we were talking about that trade initially with Kaiser and Merrick, that if there was going to be another piece, coming within, if this was the first part of a bigger picture scenario. And I don't know or imagine that this is that other
Mhm.
piece. I just think it is, this is obviously Simon is a player that came into this squad as part of the, expansion draft, and has seen her playing time diminish, quite frankly. We haven't really got to see a lot of Simon in 2022. And so I would imagine, a player like her is looking for a team to go ahead and get an opportunity to get extended minutes. So I don't really view this as like the other piece that I think that we were maybe looking to come through by way of Louisville. But do hope that she does get some extended minutes her way as well.
I mean, to see this coming out of Racing Louisville, there's been a lot of turnover happening with
Yeah.
Racing Louisville, with Merrick and Kaiser, as you just mentioned, and now as Simon gets waived, it's almost like Kim Bjorkegren is having a little bit of turnover there. We've seen Nadia Nadim come back into play, getting minutes there, but all the best for Erin Simon. It seems to be that there are plans in the making for other places that she can go and other things that she can do and other leagues that she can join. So best of luck to Simon. We'll be watching and following closely, and hope to see you return to the NWSL soon.
Let's chat about not so much player movement anymore, but there's some NWSL overlap that's been happening in terms of recent roster drops, and I'm excited for us to chat a little bit more about CONCACAF as a whole and sort of the overlap between NWSL, because that stuff is just, it's delightful to talk about. I love that you can look at some of these rosters across CONCACAF that have dropped recently. And a lot of them are for camps that are coming up. I know for Mexico, they announced their roster for the upcoming friendlies that they are going to have against Peru versus we had a roster drop with the United States women's national team where they went ahead and announced, they just said, this is going to be the 23 players that we take to Mexico in July, but here's also a couple other players that we're going to keep within training for these upcoming friendly. So a little bit of a different type of rollout for rosters, whereas the US are just saying like, this is it and this is who's going. And I think within some of these rosters for like Jamaica, for example, they're having a camp to have all their players together before they go to Mexico. So they're going to do 2 weeks of training in Colorado. So it's like different types of rosters. But I think even when we start looking through Jamaica's squad list and Mexico's squad list, that there's going to be probably a big bulk of players that we're going to see in these July qualifiers as well. Why don't we just go ahead and start pointing out and shouting out some of these NWSL players who have been announced to some of these rosters, Lisa?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, CONCACAF is big. There's a lot of crossover. A lot of it's geographically close to the U.S., which helps that crossover a little bit more. But for the Mexican national team out of North Carolina, forward Diana Ordonez called up for these June friendlies as Mexico plays against Peru. Also out of Houston, Maria Sanchez, the forward. She's called up to the Mexican national team with OL Reign, Jimena Lopez, and Karina Rodriguez out of Washington Spirit, all being called up for that June window for those friendlies where Mexico will play Peru. But there's a number of other CONCACAF teams that also have players being called up. Jamaica has a lot of NWSL crossover with Sydney Schneider, goalkeeper out of Kansas City Current, Allison Swaby out of Angel City FC, Havana Salone out of North Carolina Courage, and Satara Murray out of Racing Louisville, all being called up to the Jamaican women's national team to play for the CONCACAF W Championship. And Jamaica is in the group with the United States and Mexico and Haiti. It's a hefty group that foursome makes up, but a lot of familiar faces for NWSL fans that are excitedly getting ready to tune into the CONCACAF W Championship that starts July 4th. It's right around the corner.
It's so much closer than we anticipate. Like before we know it, we're gonna be like talking about all of these players again, but just like actually with matches under their belt, minutes under their belt for sure during July. Looking at Mexico, we're seeing some overlap as well, and we were really excited about that. So being able to say like, hey, there's actually a handful of players here for the Reggae Girls representing in CONCACAF. But there's also the same, there's a bit of a handful for Mexico as well. So I think maybe one of the biggest names out there that people are probably going to be keeping an eye on is Diana Ordonez. She's got a couple goals with Mexico under their previous qualifying tournament that took place in April and February. Now getting the call up to these Peru friendlies at the end of the month. Maria Sanchez for Houston Dash, also part of that roster, and OL Reigns, Jimena Lopez, but also Karina Rodriguez of the Washington Spirit. So a little bit of a bigger squad that Monica Vergara is taking, they're collecting together for these June friendlies ahead of the CONCACAF qualifiers in July. I would imagine she has to, do some work to narrow it down. But selfishly, I would love to see all of these players who are representing an NWSL on that roster in July. And I feel like there's a good shot for these players. I think when I'm looking at a player like Diana Ordonez or Maria Sanchez or Jimena Lopez, like Jimena Lopez is a player who has one of these players that obviously came up through the collegiate system alongside like players like Ordonez, Rodriguez, and Sanchez, but has also kind of been within that national team pool for an extended period of time, even with perhaps some coaching rotation at various points for the Mexican Federation. So I would imagine that she is going to be a player that's a lock for them. And I just don't know how, like, when you're looking, if you're evaluating or looking at like current form, I'm just not sure how you like leave somebody like Maria Sanchez off of that. So I would imagine that we will probably see these players representing Mexico,
especially
in July.
Diana Ordonez. I think she's just been so tremendous with North Carolina Courage and what she's been able to do. Yeah, I mean, tough decisions across the board for all of these international coaches, but in terms of scheduling, I think this is a little important to touch on. The NWSL continues to play throughout July. They have an international break.
Yeah.
That starts July 18th, with games ending on the 17th, and it goes until July 28th. So there's over a week, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, 12 days of that international window. However, on July 4th is when the Concacaf W Championship starts, and that runs until the final on July 18th, which is when the NWSL international window starts. And then the UEFA Women's Euros, that starts on July 6th. That runs all the way through the end of the month, July 31st. So there are a lot of players missing. We've already experienced it in the NWSL with Houston Dash. Rachel Daly has been called into the England international roster, which is traditional for her, and she's already reported. So she will be gone until, if England makes it towards the championship, the 31st out of the NWSL, which is the entire month of July, and she's missing about 3.5 weeks of June. So this is big. Like, having these rosters come out, it's very exciting to see all of these NWSL players being called into these rosters and these international camps and the tournaments that are taking place. So you're not going to see them in the NWSL. You've got to watch the CONCACAF W Championship. You've got to watch the Women's Euros. You've got to watch these friendlies that Mexico is playing against Peru if you want to watch these players. And I highly recommend it. These players are very good, and it's fun to watch them with their national teams and see what they do differently. Like Rachel Daly,
I also like
our striker for Houston. She plays defense for England. Go
Yeah,
watch it. It's really fun to watch her.
outside back energy. I just am like, I just like pointing out the overlaps. I think for maybe like people who are newer to NWSL or newer to, following women's soccer, like I love when you can point out the overlap in that, because if you are watching, like if you're watching NWSL on a regular basis, and then you sort of see these these sort of bigger national, international tournaments kind of come into play, it's an opportunity for you to point out and be like, hey, like I know who this player is, I know what they can bring to the pitch, and sort of see how that translates on the international stage. And I'm always looking forward to that. And I love that there's this overlap between all of these major tournaments. So we've got like obviously the big one that we're going to be keeping a close eye on in the CONCACAF W Championship. And we're talking a little bit about Euros and the overlap with players there, but also like African Cup of Nations is going to be kicking off as well in July. And there's also some awesome representation there with NWSL players, both out of Gotham. So we've got Estelle Johnson that's going to be linking up with the Cameroon national team, and Ifeoma Anumanu, who's was selected for the Nigerian national team. They're going to be making their preparations in Morocco. So this is another one of these tournaments that's going to be taking place through a long stretch of July. African Cup of Nations, July 2nd through July 23rd. And I'm hyped for it. I'm really excited for this Nigerian national team. It's the hope that kills you, they say, but I'm excited to sort of see these players, sort of come together and hopefully go on a good run, and then ride that into 2023 as well. So keep an eye on African Cup of Nations as well if you're able. And you mentioned Rachel Daly for the Euros already with England by way of Houston Dash, but a couple other players representing in the Euros as well. Orlando Pride's going to, John Thor's going to be participating with Iceland, Sophia Jakobsson with Sweden, and Portland Thorns Natalie Kuika with Finland. So like I'm loving that like we're able to go through these kind of major tournaments and be able to say like, look at these like, handful of players that we get to watch, that we've been watching week in and week out and evaluating and analyzing.
Yeah, I love it. All these players being called up. It's fun to talk about, fun to see them do different things. I mean, Sophia Jakobsson specifically with Sweden, she's a player that I've watched with Sweden for years. I mean, even throughout the Olympics last year. And then when she was traded and coming to San Diego Wave FC, it was so exciting to watch her then play with players like Alex Morgan and Jodie Taylor. And now to have her back with Sweden in these Euros, it's incredibly exciting to see. But yeah, there's a lot happening. There's a lot of overlap going on, a lot of players being caught up, and a lot of different things happening. There was also some news that came out due to the U.S. women's national team and the CBA between the men's national team and the women's national team and the pays that are happening there. And that's being put into place for this Concacaf W Championship. Already these players are seeing benefit from the dollar bills that will be coming towards way towards this Concacaf W Championship, which is great to see already the benefits for these players coming off.
Yeah, I love that. Shout out to the homie Meg Linehan, just sort of putting the numbers in perspective.
Doing the math for all of those who don't want to do math.
Yeah, for people who don't want to do math, Meg Linehan's got your back, and I appreciate that as always. But essentially, it's kind of putting it out there for everyone that for U.S. women's national team players who are on the 2 game day rosters with Colombia coming up, there's going to be some added benefits there in terms of pay. So you're talking about $8,000 just for an appearance fee, potential $5,000 game bonus, up to two times that you're talking about over $25K right there. When you're looking ahead to the W Championship roster, just $10K for the appearance fee. You have a $14,000 bonus, a game bonus, and if you maybe meet those across the 5 games, you're talking $120,000 in potential max out totals. So if you have a player that's going through all 7 games, you're talking even higher, closer to 150 in comparison to just appearances for the roster and actual game bonuses that are met. So I love it. I love that we're like getting to see this finally come into play very, very quickly. I'm thrilled for the players who have the opportunity to hit some of these marks. But in terms of bonuses, some news out of Spain as well. The Spanish side, they will also be receiving the same bonuses as their male counterparts. It's part of a new 5-year agreement, and the Spanish Football Federation just recently announced that. So we were like looking at, wow, there's an opportunity here. We're starting to see some things change a little bit, and it's nice to sort of see that, and especially when it comes in the form of dollar bills, like you said, Lisa. But it was like seeing that, it was like exciting, but at the same time, it's like taking good with the bad, and I kind of didn't like that. But there was also some additional roster news for them as well. They recently announced that Jenny Hermoso is not going to be available for the upcoming Euros, and I was like, well, this is quite the bummer. Like I wish I could put it in another way, but very prolific player, has been part of the Spanish side for a very, very long time. Obviously, huge piece for Barcelona as well. So just these are the moments, like these are the big stages where you like get really excited in a different type of way to see these types of players go head to head, and just unfortunate.
Yeah, really sad to see Hermosa ruled out. I mean, she suffered an injury in the training camp with Spain ahead of this. I believe it was like a ligament damage during the prep that she suffered, which is just horrible. So many injuries, right? Like
I know.
it's back to back to back, and we've talked about it. The U.S.
It puts a damper on it. I hate to be that way, but like I think especially if you're like a neutral and you're like, oh, like if you find yourself and you're the type of person that watches this sport or watches these type of tournaments, and you are into these things specifically for, you know, a certain type of player performance, like that puts a damper on things. So like for people who are like really excited to see somebody like a Katerina Macario play in a tournament, a CONCACAF qualifier for the first time, are probably like, this is kind of a damper for me. Or people who were like maybe excited to see Jenny Hermoso like go to another Euros and see what she can do. Like that's a bummer. Like it puts a damper on it, I think, for you. And I don't think that's unfair to mention or say. Like there are people who are, yes, fans of their clubs or fans of a national team, but there's a lot of people out there who are fans of performances and fans of players. So when you look at that, or you see an injury or you see an absence on a roster, you're just like, gosh, that's it for me. I'm out, and I can hardly blame him. So, but delightful to see so much overlap again between NWSL and a lot of different rosters across many different nations. I'm very, very excited for that. I remember during the World Cup that like the league did like a whole collection, like it was a graphic on their social about like all the players who were participating in the World Cup. And like I would love to see like that again. I would love to see like all players who are like currently participating in all these massive tournaments and cups like during the month of July. So that's my request. I'm putting in my graphic request right now. I wanna see it. But yeah, that's it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening to Attacking Third. You can follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Attacking Third. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your shows. We're also available as video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Visit youtube.com/Attacking Third. If you have questions for us, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your question, and we'll answer it during a mailbag segment. And we will be back Friday with a full NWSL preview for Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman. This was Attacking Third.